My name's Cindy Pratt. I am a Wixie certified educator and a media specialist, and I am here with Liz Christensen.
I'm a fifth and sixth grade math teacher, and I've been using Wixie almost exclusively for my math assignments while I've been in distance learning with students.
And I frequently use Wixie with my students for different activities in media, but I did notice I could see the things the kids were doing in their portfolios in Wixie and thought that was a really interesting way to use it and would like to share that with you today. So, um, what we're talking about today is using Wixie for progress checks. And some examples of this would be formative assessments as you're teaching, um, CBMs, curriculum based measurements, RTI, response to intervention, rating assessments, and there's a lot of other applications. And it's a great way to check in with students on what they're understanding and how they're doing with the current curriculum that you're teaching. When we were talking about it, we were thinking about the fact that during a progress check, if you make it in Wixie, student can have the directions read to them by their teacher because you can use a video to present the directions to them. Students can show their thinking in many ways, and it supports the language learners really well because they have so many options for exploring the information and also for getting that information at the speed at which they can process it. It also gives you the benefit of after the progress check, the teacher can make a shared copy for collaborative reteaching with a student. Teachers have a record of the student's thinking, so you can easily see their progress in gaining that knowledge. And the misconceptions can be addressed using the examples of student work during class. So you can come back to that for others that might have had the same misconceptions. Um, and I'm going to let Liz talk about how she originally set this up, but this is one example of just a real quick progress check with an assignment. One of the things I loved about this is that we've got some great visuals, and the students started to actually look at the problem and draw it out in Wixie, and then went to a more detailed drawing on paper. But because there's the option of importing an image, just took a picture of it to share their thinking.
Yeah, so I was able to take a pre-created progress check. If you ever have the opportunity to learn about OGAP, Ongoing Assessment Project, they're really awesome for math. And so this is one of their formative assessments for multiplicative thinking. And so I was able to provide the visual support because the kids didn't really know what a tile floor was at first. I wanted to support kids who weren't familiar with that. And then wanted to make sure kids had the opportunity to share their thinking in a way that like felt authentic for them and allowed them to express their thinking as well as possible. So kids do record their thinking using the microphone. Some kids do videos. Some kids write right on the Wixie, and then other kids use a notebook or a whiteboard and take a picture of it.
Um, Liz, just clarify for me the bigger text is what she typed in, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yep. Um, and as you get to more complicated things and you want to do a formal progress check, this was a nice layout of directions. And the top part is my addition. So start with the directions on the first page. And that's something that I never did with my own Wixie projects that I set up, but it really is a valuable thing. Put the instructions on the first page so that as soon as the student logs in and opens it, they see what they need to do. Visuals are great, especially with English language learners. And being able to record either audio directions or video directions can help. While you can always set up your project to go straight to the clipboard of directions for the student and it can read the directions for them, the flexibility added with video is great because the kids can click directly on the picture of a teacher they recognize and listen to the video instructions. So I thought that was a wonderful addition. This is an example of one of the more formal project progress checks.
Right. So this year, because we were not with students in person, we were not able to do some of our normal screeners in the fall to figure out which kids might need some intervention. I was asked to meet with each of my fifth graders one on one and do this very extensive 10-question math reasoning inventory to figure out about their additive thinking and their multiplicative thinking. And I found that it took me a long time because I would ask them the question and then they would think about it and then they would share their answer. So half of the time I was meeting with the student, it was just me waiting for them to answer the question. And then the second time I was asked to give them again to see if students were making progress, I knew I wasn't able to give that much class time up. So I created this digital version. So the question's visible. I read the question to them and the directions, and then they record their thinking with the microphone. And so then I would go back, listen to each student's answer, and score it using the rubric. And it went a lot faster because all of the students were able to take it at the same time. And it only took me like 5 or 6 minutes, maybe less, to score each one instead of 30 minutes meeting with the actual student.
And in this, if you click on the picture, there's her video. And I believe this is actually an adult modeling on this one. So if
Yeah,
we
I
click on the,
tested it out on my husband.
yeah.
He was kind enough to take the assessment.
3 times 15 is 315. Because it's one more set of 15 after the 300.
So, but the student would do the same kind of thing for it. And there's just a couple of these in here. And again, you can do individual video instructions on each page. So that gives the student a chance to really understand if they can't read the question themselves, if they're still working on their English language skills, they still get that audio or video of the actual problem, which is really significant.
I also found it helpful when I was scoring because I could replay their explanation to figure out how they were solving the problem and what kind of thinking they were using.
One of the things I realized is by recording your instructions, you ensure that you are giving the exact same instructions to each student, but you could also modify it to give different instructions that might be slightly worded differently for your English language learners or someone else, that you can modify it, but your consistency across the board, you didn't miss a word, you didn't forget a set of instructions because it's all there, it's recorded. So you get a little bit more reliability with the test. I also tried this with a reading assessment. As a media specialist, I don't generally do reading assessments. So this was a student that came in just to do this for me. But same kind of thing. You can play the video for the directions. And I kind of included an arrow to just call attention to it. And the student was able to come do a reading recording. So she read the entire thing, using the video feature. So I can go through and listen to exactly how she's doing with her reading. Is she adding words? Is she pausing?
The girl in the picture long ago, on an extremely hot day, there were two thirsty crows. One girl.
Okay. So this gives me the chance I can go through it slowly. And oftentimes when you are doing reading assessments, because I have done them, things go really quickly. You have to be able to record it so that you don't miss anything as they're reading. But in this case, I could go back over it if I needed to. And I'm very clearly, able to go over it repeatedly just to make sure I get all of the data that I need to out of it. The next part of a reading assessment often is comprehension. So I can see right here, she answered, where's the setting of the story inside? Well, she missed something in that step because the story is outside. So I understand that she might have gotten a little off there, but she's able to just circle the answer, which is beautiful with Wixie. You get that option. But on another page, she wrote the answer using a text box. So it gives them that flexibility to answer the way they want to, however they're comfortable. In this case, I had her use the highlighter if she wanted to highlight the portions that gave her the answer. She also recorded her answer, which was actually the recording gave me more of an understanding of what she meant, because when I looked at her highlighting, I wasn't quite sure if I was thinking the same thing as her. But the recording made it really clear that she did understand why she knew that it was a narrator telling the story. So it gives you a little bit deeper understanding to what's in the student's mind when you can actually hear them talk about it. And then this last one, she was able to explain to me using an audio recording how their perspectives were different. So it really worked well with that reading assessment, and would be something I would totally advocate with teachers, even in person, if they had some timing issues and they needed to make sure they were doing assessments, but the time wasn't there to sit one-on-one with all the students. So some of the student benefits we've realized are here. They can repeat the instructions over and over again. Gives them that open time frame that they can think through their answer. They can be flexible in their responses. It lowers the anxiety of responding. The testing anxiety is a real thing. There's a ton of resources out there for testing anxiety, but the moment that a student is faced with, this is an assessment, this is a test, this is a progress check, that anxiety level goes up. But with this, they're able to take a deep breath, slow down, re-record if they need to. So it can lower their anxiety level. Plus, they're not staring at a teacher that's waiting for them. They have their own time frame, and they're not worried about that other person that is waiting for their response. And so you're getting a more authentic and reliable result of their thinking. Plus, on a different note, because it's them recording on their own, they're not worried about responding in front of peers. They're not worried about being judged right in front of them, because they're not seeing your response. And I know that the one-on-one is really valuable, but at times it can help to lower anxiety if the student can just relax and respond on their own. Going back to the graded progress checks, this was an example a little later in the year, right, Liz?
Yeah, this is more recent from this quarter. So I got a little better at giving directions, I think. I would give the progress check during our live meet, and then kids would do it on their own.
And I like the way, since it was with Meet, you're integrating the instructions here just in case someone went to the assignment early, reminds them that they should be in Meet.
And some
And
kids were in a breakout room, so they would have a quiet space to work on their assessment. So I wanted them to have the directions, so they knew what to do when they were done.
so this is a student's response here to the um, assignment, and it wasn't video or audio they chose to type, but it gives them that option for flexible response.
And the blue text is a sentence frame that to try to get the kids to share their thinking. So they filled in because I multiply and add them together.
And then this is showing thinking, right? Showing how that works.
Yep. So many students like to do their work on a notebook or on a whiteboard, and whiteboard is especially helpful because it's nice and big and dark and easy to take a picture of. Easy to read.
Often Liz was giving them the directions to insert a screenshot from class, which gives them notes to refer back to. It really gives them an attachment to that live session, that if they're looking at it later, they might not be able to remember everything that's said, but they have the visual here. So Everyone learns to take a screenshot. Now they have evidence of what they're learning in class, so it can help them to solve the problem subsequently. One of the other things that gives the opportunity for is differentiation. And we have a lot of different levels of learners in our school, including kids that are just new to country, and kids that are high learners as well, and everywhere in between. And so this was an example of a way that Liz was differentiating with a student.
So one of my students is new to country. She's had some experience with some very traditional calculator-based math, and I'm really pushing her conceptual thinking. So we're trying not to use a calculator on these ratio problems. So she and I were working on this together. It was just a daily assignment, but I made it a team project, and then she and I could work on the same assignment together. I could change the color coding. We can both record our thinking. I pulled in some pictures from outside of Wixie. The Math Learning Center has some nice apps. That's where the number rack came from. And then I would also pull in some of the visuals from Wixie, rectangles, base 10,
And it looks
point
like
frames.
you outlined them as you were talking through it,
Yep.
and allows you to, work through the problem together.
Yeah,
And
we were working on some skip counting there.
and so this is really a nice way to be flexible, but also you can differentiate. There were more assignments in that, more pages in that assignment, but some of it was not assigned to this student because it just wasn't. We want to differentiate for what they need, and doing it 8 times is not necessarily worth it if we're just working through one at a time, gaining those initial skills. So it's okay to differentiate, assign different things to different students, and that is possible because you can assign individually. So,
Yep. And I have a couple of students who work on their math assignments with a special education assistant every day. So when I would create the assignment, I would automatically make a copy for those students and team make it a team project, put their teachers they work with, their resource teacher and their SEAs on there so that they could all work on it together if needed.
it was actually a very amazing feature when we realized we could do this with our special ed students because the way our district is set up, their the aides that work with them weren't always set up as teachers. So by teaming, we could slow it down. And if they were undoing and they went too far, we could stop the process and get the page reset. Get the page reset for them, because often they didn't know how many times they clicked, or um, things like that. So being able to create a team project really made a difference with giving that one-to-one support for the students.
Mhm. And in person, an SEA might record a student's thing for them, and
Yeah.
now they're able to do that with that team project.
Yep. This was another one of the screenshots of what was going on in class. And I like the variety of information you're thinking of with this. And that was what, was the value of this, is being able to use teams to go through the project, and you can give that one-to-one, especially, when you might not have a good learning platform for drawing out responses. Wixie is fantastic for being able to draw out math responses. We're Google Classroom based, and there's really no visuals that are possible to draw out there. So being able to go through a project together, and I noticed with this one, you're literally drawing out a response. That's makes a huge difference. In this case, the student had recorded videos of their thinking, and I'm going to play one of the videos, I think.
Number 2. How fairy can sell kite? K. tell in fully on 1 hour. 15 plus 15, 30. 15 plus 30 is going to be 45. 45 plus 15 is going to be 15. 60. That's what I get my answer. Well, we was 15 4 times.
What I loved about that video is just from the language perspective, from the reading perspective, she's still struggling with the reading, but she's got the math. I can completely follow what she's doing there. And while she may be struggling with English, she may be struggling with reading English words, the math is solid. And so as an assessment, we're not really just looking at, did we create the right answer? Because it's possible to copy the right answer, but you can hear her explain and go through the numbers and really get through the process that she took to get there.
And I know that speaking is a really important skill. My ESL teacher on my team is always like, we got to get the kids to talk more. They got to share their thinking. So that's a good skill for them to practice. And they might not, like this student isn't sharing her thinking out loud during class very often, because she probably needs a little bit to her thoughts. And our class is very short right now in distance learning, but she still has a chance to share her thinking now in Wixie and to practice her speaking skills.
And that's kind of the different examples that we prepared to share. And I think, well, this is just another example of how the page looked and what they were going through with that. And we're open to answer questions, but we just found it a really effective technique to, especially with distance learning, do one-on-one. But I know Liz said at one point in time that she didn't want to give it up. She wanted to still continue using it in person because it's just a really effective way for kids to share their thinking.
Yep. And even if they don't know where their assignment is, I can usually find it.
Yeah, not lost. Just going back to kind of our overview that we started with. It definitely does get the English language learners talking a little bit more. The quieter students get a chance to explain when they might normally be, drowned out by other students. They're still getting their chance to explain. So it really gives students empowerment to have a voice and feel like, yep, they have a valid explanation. Doesn't matter that they don't have to shout it out. They can share it.
I started using videos of myself when I was getting to assignments where it wasn't something I could easily copy and paste into Wixie. I would have had to retype it because it was some kind of weird picture or PDF, like the nail assignment. So normally I'd like my students to have access to the little speakerphone or whatever that'll read it to you. But if it's a picture, they can't do that. So that's why I started recording myself reading the directions right inside the Wixie instead of recording a separate video, making them open another link. That was very helpful for kids who weren't able to read it on their own yet.
I didn't happen to keep track of chat. I didn't see any specific questions. Video definitely does make it easier to understand their thinking. And it's sometimes fun to hear how their brain works.